The $7.5 billion lie. Why EV chargers are always broken. The app says green. For stalls. Available. A minivan rolls in on 9 miles left. Kids asleep. Ice on the windshield. The lot lights hum. The chargers don't. Card declined. Try again. Session failed. An hour from the next town, the battery ticks colder. Mom calls the number on the sticker. Voicemail. Dad checks another app. Still green. They aren't alone. Across the state, the map glows. Everywhere and nowhere at once. Billions were allocated to make this simple. Uptime targets promise certainty. Instead, taxpayers fund stalls that don't start, and drivers pay in time. To understand how the map filled up while stations stayed dark, we rewind. The dream versus the lot. The sales pitch was clean. Fast chargers everywhere. Cheaper than gas. Greener than yesterday. Pull in, tap, charge, go. Early decks showed highways stitched with lightning bolts and cheerful families smiling under a blue sky. Range anxiety would vanish, they said, because reliability would be engineered, subsidized, and standardized. That dream turned heads and opened checkbooks. Now walk a real lot. The screens are sun-faded or cracked. One stall is blocked by a delivery truck that's been parked for days. Another displays, initializing forever. The card reader blinks, then errors out. A QR code sends you to an app that wants an update, a new password, and a billing address you already gave last week. A third stall shows available, but the connector's latch won't seat. A fourth powers on, starts a session, and drops it at 2 minutes. You don't need a white paper to feel the gap. Networks tout uptime. 97%, 98%, sometimes higher. Here's the game. Network uptime can mean the cloud servers are responsive while half the ports at a site are failing in the field. Or port uptime counts hours a port reports as online, not hours it actually delivers energy. A port that pings is different from a port that charges. And the number looks fine if it averages quiet nights with peak weekend meltdowns. Meanwhile, users measure reliability in minutes lost. Early adopters learned to buffer hours into road trips. Charger anxiety replaced range anxiety. You arrive with 20% because you don't trust the last 10 miles. Then you sit hoping the handshake completes. When it fails, you move your car 2 feet, reboot the app, try the next stall, and text apologies to whoever's waiting for you. It's not just frustration, it's a tax on time. Microstalls are the worst offenders. They look online. They even begin a session. But they won't cross a few kilowatts without tripping an error, ground fault, isolation fault, payment token mismatch, take your pick. The session cancels. The app keeps your authorization hold. The dashboard dings, charging interrupted. From the sidewalk, a passerby sees 4 green lights and assumes progress. Inside the car, the battery percentage hasn't moved. Data is scarce where it matters. Most performance metrics are self-reported. Baselines get trimmed to exclude construction periods, utility outages, or host site issues. Peak hour failures, when lines form and reputations are made, disappear into monthly averages. You'll find a glossy PDF with targets met and a comment section under a local news story full of stranded drivers and photos of caution taped around a station that met compliance. And yet, the promise machine kept humming. Press conferences announced corridors complete before transformers arrived. Ribbon cuttings showed officials gripping scissors beside plastic-wrapped pedestals, while the site's utility meter wasn't even set. The dream got funded. The lot didn't. So where did the cash flow? Into hardware, trenching, and headlines. Less into spare parts bins, field techs, and software QA that survives winter. Here's the human version. Daniel, a night shift nurse, buys an EV because the math pencils with home charging. But he rents. Street parking. Twice a week he depends on a public fast charger after midnight. 1 week the card reader refuses every tap. The next week, the connector's cracked. The third week, a new sign. Out of service, awaiting parts. He detours 15 minutes to another site and finds 3 cars in line. He's late twice and swaps shifts. The savings evaporate in missed sleep. Operators face a different calculus. They installed to specs that one grants. They hit the photo op, but their sites bleed cash when utilization is low and maintenance costs are high. Every truck roll eats a month's margin. When a station sits idle, vandalism rises. Cut cables, graffiti, pried open doors. Insurance deductibles turn small incidents into full hits. So the operator delays visits, stretches service intervals, and lets soft fail stalls limp along because someone somewhere might get a charge through. The slicker the dashboard, the harder the edge cases hide. Roaming integrations can show availability, while tokenization breaks at the curb. Firmware that passes lab tests collapses under real-world noise. Dirty power, temperature swings, worn connectors, and payment gateways throttling at peak. And when the failure crosses company lines, hardware vendor, software provider, payment processor, utility, accountability turns foggy. Everyone has logs. No one has resolution. If the system were healthy, you'd see the opposite. Boring lots, clean cables, clear signage, stable pricing. A session that starts in seconds and never drops. You'd see service vans making regular circuits, not crisis calls. You'd see uptime measured by delivered kilowatt hours during peak windows, audited by third parties with the teeth to claw back funds. Instead, we have a map that says here and a curb that says not today. The dream says fast, everywhere, cheaper. The lot says maybe, sometimes bring a backup plan. And the truth sits in the middle. Reliability wasn't prioritized in how money moved, how success was measured, and how risk was assigned. The dream didn't die. It was mispriced. The money line is simple. Reliability costs more upfront, but less over time. It means parts on shelves, technicians on payroll, and contracts that punish downtime. That's not glamorous spending. It doesn't make for good ribbon photos. But it's the difference between a system and a collection of boxes. The question is who sold the other version, who profited from it, and who pays for the gap. Taxpayers funded acceleration. Drivers pay in hours. Grid operators juggle peaks and press releases. Small towns get a dead pedestal by the diner. The dream was real enough to fund. The lot is real enough to feel. The next step is to follow the money that promised reliability and didn't deliver. The subsidy firehose. To see how the dream got funded while the lot stayed broken, follow the money. Washington opened multiple spigots. NEVI promised coast-to-coast fast charging along highways with federal dollars covering most of the build. Tax credits sweetened hardware purchases. Separate grant programs targeted corridor gaps, disadvantaged communities, and rural routes. States layered on their own rebates. Utilities offered make-ready funds. Everything up to the pedestal. Trenching, conduit, transformers, and meters. On paper, the stack made new sites look irresistible. But announcements aren't energization. Headline totals landed first. Billions allocated, corridors designated, targets published. Actual disbursements moved like wet concrete. Agencies wrote rules, then rewrote them. State DOTs built application portals from scratch. Utility interconnections waited behind transformer backlogs. A site could win an award, hold a ribbon cutting, and still be dark for months because a switchgear shipment slipped or a meter set date kept sliding. Private capital tethered itself to public cash. Operators timed deployments to grant cycles. Business models formed around the incentive specs themselves. If the program paid per port at a specific power level with certain connectors, vendors sold to that list. If a scoring rubric rewarded geographic coverage, proposals stretched into thin routes with sparse utilization. If make-ready dollars covered the civil works, developers prioritized cheap land near existing utility access over places drivers actually wanted to stop. Procurement rubrics favored installation volume over long-term performance. Many grant applications scored heavily on shovel readiness, number of ports, and compliance paperwork. Reliability often sat as an aspirational bullet. Uptime target, 97%. With no independent auditing or harsh clawbacks if it wasn't met. Service-level agreements looked tidy in binders but thin in practice. Vague resolution windows, no on-site parts requirements, and penalties capped below the cost of sending a truck. Award structures made it worse. Programs front-loaded payments at groundbreaking, at equipment delivery, and at substantial completion. Milestones paid when the post stood upright, not when drivers charged through a holiday weekend without a glitch. A site could hit operational, with one working stall while the other three flashed error codes, yet the funding ledger would mark it as done. Invoices cleared, uptime was left to later. So you got perverse outcomes. Dead-on-arrival sites still counted. Port counts climbed while delivered kilowatt hours lagged. Corridors were declared complete by geography while reliability collapsed at peak hours. Developers optimized to the scorecard. Minimum number of ports, minimum power, minimum signage, maximum awards. The incentives bought metal and concrete. They didn't buy maintenance. Meanwhile, vendor lock-in slipped in through specifications. NEVI-compliant sites needed open payments and roaming, but many implementations were brittle. Operators, chasing grants, selected approved hardware stacks that met the letter of the spec but required proprietary tools to service. If a payment module failed, you waited on that OEM's part number and that OEM's schedule. If a gateway firmware needed certification, it queued in a lab that everyone else relied on too. Multi-vendor stacks multiplied points of failure while diffusing responsibility. Paperwork outpaced wrenches. Submittals, drawings, and compliance attestations sailed through email chains. Field crews hit rock, water, or surprise easements. Change orders ate contingency budgets. Utility, make ready promise savings, but came with sequencing the operator didn't control. A trench could sit open while an upstream upgrade waited on a regional crew. By the time power arrived, the grant window for performance reporting had started, counting availability from the day the modem went online, not from when a driver actually charged. Announcements versus disbursements became a recurring pattern. Governors posed under banners with big round numbers. Agencies published dashboard maps with dots, funded, planned, in progress. Drivers saw the same dots mirrored in apps and assumed reality. But the pipeline was slow, and the dollars had conditions. Many states added their own layers: prevailing wage, domestic content, environmental reviews, each defensible on its own, each adding time between award and usable power. Operators shaped their books around this delay. A site that was 80% paid by public money before first revenue looked like a win, until utilization landed at a trickle and demand charges arrived with the first travel surge. Maintenance, which wasn't subsidized, turned into the shock. Truck rolls weren't reimbursed. Replacement cables weren't offset. Firmware validation time wasn't billable. Cutting service looked like the only lever to keep margins from going negative, and the incentives didn't punish that choice. Few programs verified uptime independently. Many accepted self-reported spreadsheets. A port could be available in logs while sessions failed at the curb. Without hard clawbacks tied to audited, delivered energy during peak windows, reliability sat as a promise, not an obligation. Sites could accumulate months of soft failure. Intermittent faults, payment quirks, temperamental connectors, while the ledger showed compliance met. When money pays for ribbon cuttings, performance becomes optional. The Firehose financed a rapid build, but it didn't finance the unglamorous backbone. Spare parts bins positioned regionally, trained technicians on routes, standardized components across vendors, and service software tuned for harsh conditions. We didn't fund a service business. We funded a construction boom. And construction optics can hide empty lots. The irony is stark. Programs meant to de-risk private investment sometimes encourage the riskiest behavior. Chasing checks first, customers second. The map filled with obligations. The curb filled with excuses. Until awards pay for delivered, dependable charging and pull funds back when drivers get stranded, the Firehose will keep watering headlines, not reliability. The utilization trap. Here's the part the press releases skip. Even if the hardware works, the math breaks when cars don't show up. A fast charging site is a small power plant with rent. There's capex for pedestals and dispensers, switchgear, trenching, conduit, bollards, cabinets, networking, cameras, and signage. There's engineering, permits, and utility fees. There's recurring insurance, data plans, payment processing, site lease, snow removal, landscaping, and the line item everyone underestimates: maintenance. Those costs don't care if nobody plugs in on a Tuesday. Utilization does. A typical 4-stall highway site needs a certain number of paid sessions per day just to cover fixed costs before electricity. At low throughput, every empty hour compounds. One truck roll to replace a cable can wipe out a week of margin. Add a vandalized screen or a payment module that needs overnight shipping, and the month turns red. Throughput reality is stubborn. Weekend travelers create bursts, weekdays sag. Urban sites serving apartment dwellers can be steady, but only if they're near groceries or gyms that fit dwell times. Rural gaps have long stretches of nothing, and then a holiday crush. Highways, which NEVI chased, are feast or famine. You can't set pricing to match the surge without scaring off the base. Location profiles pull in opposite directions. Urban dwellers without garages will use public chargers regularly, but they favor reliability and predictable pricing over raw speed. Highway corridors need heavy power for short stops, yet many stops are seasonal. Rural stations are lifelines when they exist, but a 100-mile catchment doesn't guarantee volume. It guarantees pressure when one port fails. A site can be essential and unprofitable at the same time. Then there's the price cage. Regulators or program rules often cap per kWh margins or ban session fees. Operators face energy markets that spike late afternoons, plus demand charges that punish the single worst. 15 minutes of the month. If the site can't pass volatility to customers, it eats it. So companies add idle fees or per-minute charges to push turnover. Drivers hate it. Some avoid stops they don't understand, pushing utilization lower and anti-feedback higher. Idle depreciation is its own leak. Cables fatigue each time someone drops a handle. Boots crack in heat and cold. Connectors collect grit. Contactors cycle even during failed starts. Vandalism is a probability function of emptiness. Empty lots invite bored hands. A tag of spray, paint isn't just cosmetic if cameras get covered and theft follows. Every day a site sits quiet, risk goes up and revenue doesn't. Cornered by those forces, operators choose between bleeding cash and cutting care. Many cut. They stretch service intervals and gamble that one port working will keep the app green. They delay parts orders, hoping a firmware patch rescues a flaky payment path. They route technicians to busy sites and let rural ones drift. Reliability spirals. Fewer working stalls push away drivers. Fewer drivers remove the budget to fix stalls. Here's where utilization and reliability lock together. Drivers flock to the site that starts sessions quickly. The more cars arrive, the more revenue funds same-day fixes, spare handles in the van, a tech close enough to turn around in hours. The site that drops sessions loses trust, then volume, then the money required to dig out of the hole. Two sites 5 miles apart can live in different worlds by the end of a month. Consider a corridor town off the interstate. The diner and motel cut a deal to host chargers. The first summer, road trippers show up on Fridays and Sundays. Midweek, it's quiet. Demand charges clip the margin on those few peaks. The operator tries to hold pricing, eats the bill, and trims the maintenance visit that month. A handle fails on stall 2. Next weekend, lines form at the remaining ports, tempers flare, and 2 cars leave for the next town. The app ratings drop. By fall, the diner says the chargers scared customers, but didn't bring spend. The town blames EV people. Nobody is totally wrong. Mitigations exist, but they're not free. Storage buffers can absorb peaks so demand charges don't detonate margins, but batteries, inverters, and site controls add capex and complexity. Dynamic load sharing can keep 4 cars moving on a smaller service, but it demands tight firmware and clean communications. Smart queuing and reservations can smooth arrivals, but drivers don't want to book fuel like a dinner table. The market tries loss leader math. Retailers co-locate fast chargers and hope for basket lift. Some get it, coffee, lunch, a quick shop, enough to justify keeping the site clean and staffed. Others don't. The chargers become a pure cost center with a PR halo fading fast. Without real utilization, halo light doesn't pay technicians. In the middle of this, session pricing becomes a trust signal. Transparent, stable rates attract repeat customers. Hidden fees repel them. The sites that survive publish rates clearly, avoid gotchas, and still find a way to cover volatility, usually with a buffer created by steady volume. But steady volume is an outcome of reliable operations, which is an outcome of steady volume. Breaking into that loop is the hard part. The trap isn't theoretical. It's baked into the physics of peaky loads, the economics of fixed costs, and incentive structures that paid for installs, not performance. As long as utilization stays low and lumpy, the cheapest lever is to defer care, and deferred care collapses utilization. That spiral isn't destiny, but it is the default when policy counts ports instead of delivered energy during the hours people actually charge. Maintenance is where networks die. Starved sites skip service visits, reliability spirals. Here's how the spiral forms on the ground. A station throws a fault. The operator files a ticket. Now the scavenger hunt starts. The hardware stack isn't one thing, it's 5. Dispenser from one vendor, power cabinet from another, payment module from a third, networking gateway from a fourth, cables from a fifth. Each has unique SKUs, firmware lines, and warranty terms. The part you need is backordered because a supplier switched a subcomponent. The site waits. Drivers leave angry reviews. The app still shows green. Part scarcity is the quiet killer. A cracked handle looks simple until you learn that the exact strain relief boot was revised last year, and the new boot needs a different clamp and a firmware flag that identifies connector version. That firmware flag requires certification testing to ensure it won't misread isolation resistance at low temperatures. The lab that certifies it has a 3-week queue. Meanwhile, that port is taped off with a zip-tied sign flapping in the wind. Certification delays stack in weird places. Payment modules that satisfy open-loop card rules must pass security tests. NFC readers need updates after a card. Network tweaks tokenization. Those updates are developed, then pushed to a staging environment, then to the field, if the gateway vendor and the charger vendor agree on timing. If they don't, the update lands in half the fleet and bricks a handful of units that were on an older bootloader. Rollback takes days. The parts arrive, but the software won't accept them yet. While software waits, the field reality is trucks and miles. There aren't enough certified technicians. The ones who can safely open a 100-volt cabinet, diagnose a pilot signal error, and re-terminate a high-current cable are booked. Many stations are hours from the nearest depot. A tech drives 3 hours, finds the fault is in a payment daughterboard he doesn't have because it's vendor-specific, closes the door, and leaves. Another ticket, another scheduled visit, another weekend of failure. Truck rolls burn money and time. Each roll is travel, per diem, liftgate fees if you need a cabinet swap, and often a second tech for safety lockout. Triage over the air helps, but only if the data is clean. Many sites sit behind flaky backhaul, marginal cellular coverage, throttled SIMs, or host site firewalls. Logs are incomplete. The ticket reads session failed, driver reported error 42. Error 42 could be ground fault, could be contactor chatter, could be a loose lug. You don't know until you're standing in the rain with a multimeter. Recurring pain points where patience thin. Cables live outside, they flex, drag, and hit pavement. Copper heats and cools. Insulation hardens. A connector that passed certification in a lab sees grit, ice, and the weight of a tired driver leaning on it. Weather seals on cabinet doors fail. Water gets in, condensation forms, corrosion blooms on bus bars. ADA retrofits arrive after installation because the site layout missed turning radius or slope tolerances. You move bollards, pour new concrete, and strain cable reach even more. Then there's the fine print. Warranties often exclude labor. A failed module might be replaced under parts warranty, but the operator pays to send a tech, pay the lift, and haul the old unit back. If the failure is labeled misuse, connector dropped, door forced, cable cut, coverage vanishes. Many claims sit in reimbursement queues. Cash leaves now, repayment arrives months later. Small operators struggle to float that gap. They prioritize sites that produce revenue and let marginal ones idle. Accountability fog is thickest where vendors overlap. The operator calls the charger OEM. The OEM points to the payment provider. Tokenization failure. The payment provider points to the gateway. Timeout on TLS handshake. The gateway points to the mobile network operator. Jitter on backhaul. The MNO says signal's fine. Meanwhile, the driver at 5 p.m. only knows the charger rejected their card. Everyone has logs that absolve them. No one has authority to fix the system end-to-end. Even when everyone tries, lab time is a bottleneck. New firmware that cleans up contactor timing must pass HIPOT tests and EMC checks. The certification houses serve the whole industry. They're swamped with the standards churn will hit later. A fix that could reduce faults by half sits waiting for a test slot. Field teams hold off deploying because deploying uncertified firmware risks failing a program audit. A single software flag can take a quarter to move through the snake. Meanwhile, host sites live with the fallout. The grocery manager calls the operator. Customers complain. The operator says a tech is scheduled. The tech can't pull power without the utility lockout. The utility can't dispatch because their crew is tied up on storm response. The window slips. The chargers become props again, visible, useless, and bad for the brand whose logo sits on the pedestals. The repair math tilts toward triage. Operators build tiered playbooks. Remote reset attempts 3 times. If failure persists, mark available reduced power to keep some throughput, defer full repair until a batch of sites justifies a route. That keeps dashboards green enough to avoid internal alarms. It doesn't restore trust at 6 p.m. in a snowstorm. Here's the kicker. The fix-it bill dwarfs the build-it bill when utilization is low. Building is a one-time hit with subsidies. Maintaining is a lifetime obligation with no subsidy and many hands on the steering wheel. The only networks that pull out of this trap build a maintenance business on purpose. Regional parts depots, standardized components across sites, hot swappable modules, cross-trained techs who can handle payment hardware and high power, and SLAs tied to cash. Everything else is hope. Hope that people will plug in despite bad weeks. Hope that firmware lands before winter. Hope that a single truck roll fixes 3 tickets. Hope fades fast in the cold. And that's where networks die. Not for lack of boxes in the ground, but for lack of a boring, disciplined machine that keeps them alive. The demand charge time bomb. Here's the bill that hits even when everything else goes right. You can price the land, the cabinet, the trench. You can forecast average energy costs. But the demand charge shows up like a hammer. Utilities don't just bill you for how much energy you use over a month. They also bill for the single highest 15-minute spike in power you draw. One ugly quarter hour can nuke your margin for 30 days. Fast charging loves spikes. A 350 kilowatt stall is designed to dump power fast into a nearly empty battery. Now multiply that by 2, 3, 4 stalls lighting up within minutes because a family caravan arrives or a rideshare surge directs cars to the same node. Your meter peaks once, the utility snapshots that ceiling, and your fuel cost for every other calm hour inflates. Travel patterns make it worse. Drivers cluster around holidays, Sunday returns, and weather windows. A site can idle most days, then see a mid-afternoon wave of low state of charge arrivals. You can't ask people to wait an hour to protect your bill. You plug them in, do what the site was built to do, and accept that one 15-minute peak will set the month's penalty. The emptier the other hours, the heavier that penalty feels per kilowatt hour sold. Mitigations exist, but they're not magic. Storage buffers, on-site batteries, can shave peaks by discharging when cars plug in and recharging off-peak. That helps, yet it adds capital. Battery packs, inverters, controls, thermal management, fencing, fire code compliance. It adds complexity. More firmware, more certifications, more failure modes. The control software has to predict and shape load in real time without stranding drivers. When it works, the demand line on the bill softens. When it misses, you bought an expensive box that didn't show up when you needed it. Operators also try dynamic load sharing. Instead of 4 cars each pulling 150 kilowatts, the site allocates what the grid connection can support, spreading power just enough to keep sessions moving without crossing the peak that triggers the surcharge. The trade-off is session length and customer satisfaction. People notice when a promised 150 becomes 70. Ratings drop if you don't explain, and even if you do, the line looks longer and the coffee gets cold. Software helps at the margins. Soft start firmware ramps current over a minute instead of slamming the meter in 2 seconds. Queuing logic staggers initiation by tens of seconds between stalls. Some networks experiment with reservations to smooth arrival clumps. Others nudge price signals by a few cents during the most punishing windows. Those moves require discipline and trust. Drivers accept them when they consistently see sessions start and finish without surprises. They reject them when reliability already feels shaky. Utilities have tested relief. Pilot tariffs discount demand charges for early years or cap them if operators meet certain public interest criteria. Open access, rural coverage, uptime targets. Sometimes the relief is time-limited, 3 years, then a step up. Sometimes it's tied to measured load factors. Keep your site above a threshold utilization and you earn a lower demand component. These are lifelines, but they're often patchwork. One utility territory offers a carve-out, the next county doesn't. Sunset dates loom just as traffic starts to grow. Meanwhile, the cost stack across the meter keeps climbing. Payment processing fees clip every transaction. Backhaul data plans swell as stations upload logs and diagnostics. Insurance premiums rise with claims. And the very hardware meant to tame demand, batteries, inverters, controls, needs maintenance and replacement reserves. A site that added storage to save on summer peaks can find winter performance sagging as cold soaks the pack, cutting the buffer right when holiday travel spikes. The net effect is cruel. Even subsidized sites watch the meter eat revenue. You can have 80% of CAPEX covered by grants and still lose money on operations because of one afternoon rush. You can tune firmware, add storage, install better signage, and still find your economics hinged on a quarterly hour you don't fully control. When that happens, the next lever is predictable: raise prices. Price hikes push drivers away, and the spiral returns. Lower utilization spreads fixed costs across fewer kilowatt hours, forcing further increases to cover demand penalties that don't care whether you sold 1 megawatt hour or 10. Some operators bolt per-minute fees and idle penalties onto already high per kWh rates to catch revenue from every angle. Drivers feel nickel and dimed and start avoiding those pins on the map, worsening the load factor the tariff was meant to reward. This is the mismatch between policy and physics. Funding programs standardized hardware, connector types, minimum power, spacing along corridors. They didn't standardize the tariff reality on the other side of the meter. Two otherwise identical sites, both NEVI compliant, will live different financial lives because their utilities set demand components differently and because their traffic patterns spike differently. The spec book can say 150 kilowatt minimum per port. The bill can make delivering it ruinous. There is a path that works. It looks like measured demand relief tied to audited uptime and real delivered energy during peak windows. It looks like storage treated as operations, not just CAPEX, with performance guarantees from vendors and revenue sharing for peak shaving that actually lands on the bill. It looks like fewer sites with higher quality and predictable traffic, not a thin smear across every exit. It's unflashy. It's also the turn that separates working networks from press releases. Until tariffs meet reality, operators will keep playing defense, trimming maintenance to pay for a 15-minute mistake. And every trimmed visit shows up, months later, as a dark screen in a cold lot, while the meter keeps spinning. The NEVI design problem. Policy tried to standardize the hardware. The meter wrote the reality. NEVI's rules looked crisp on paper. Every 50 miles on designated corridors, sites near highways, a minimum number of stalls, at least 150 kilowatts per port, open payments, roaming support, and uptime targets that sounded like confidence. The intent was simple: no brand lock-in, no walled gardens, just pull up and charge. Drivers heard that and expected something like an ATM network. What they got felt closer to a beta test spread across thousands of miles. Compliance became theater. The letter of the rule was met, the spirit slipped. Some sites bolted on token card readers to tick the open payment box, but the readers were finicky in the cold, or the firmware lagged, or the path from tap to token to settlement hiccuped when cellular jitter rose. The screen said tap card. The tap worked. The session didn't. On the audit sheet, the requirement was satisfied. Roaming was similar. NEVI wanted roaming, so drivers didn't juggle memberships. Operators integrated the mandated networks, but the APIs were brittle. A station could publish available through the roaming feed while failing on session creation because an ID mapping didn't match or a timeout threshold was too tight. From the car, it looked like a bait-and-switch. From the operator's dashboard, the availability graph looked green enough to pass. The uptime target sounded like a guardrail. In practice, definitions did the heavy lifting. Uptime was often defined as the hours a port reported ready, not the hours it delivered power without interruption. A port could phone home, mark itself healthy, and still trip on handshake, cable temperature, or isolation checks once current flowed. Peak weekend failures dissolved into monthly percentages. Drivers lived the denominator. Spreadsheets lived the numerator. Mandated openness introduced more failure surfaces. Payment modules had to support open-loop cards, which meant more certifications and more frequent updates to keep pace with card network changes. Each update passed through vendor stacks with different release cadences. A bug in one-layer brick terminals until a patch landed. Meanwhile, interoperable roaming demanded consistent token handling across platforms that were built by different companies with different priorities. The goal, any card, any app, was right. The pathway, complexity without matching accountability, was rough. The build spec pushed capital first. Spacing rules and minimum power levels dictated where and what to install. Money followed those lists. Performance clawbacks were weaker. Many contracts had soft remedies, a warning, a corrective plan, perhaps a partial withholding. Few tied payments tightly to audited delivered kilowatt hours during specific high-use windows. The result was predictable. The industry optimized to erect compliant sites, not to operate resilient ones. Field feedback took too long to register. Operators reported that card readers struggled with glare or snow. They asked for leeway to use better sealed models. They found that API endpoints throttled under load. They flagged that uptime calculations masked microfailures. Specs updated slowly. Procurement cycles were already underway. Hardware locked in. By the time a revision landed, the cost to retrofit was higher than the incentive left on the table. So many left the flaws in place and worked around them. NEVI's rules also froze a snapshot in a fast-moving standard story. While the market pivoted toward a different connector family, compliance still prioritized existing interfaces. Operators spent scarce dollars on ports that drivers would soon visit less. Adapters were meant to bridge the gap, but adapters added handshake permutations and points of wear. A port could be compliant and still sit idle because the cars in that region now arrived with a different expectation. Site design suffered under checkbox pressure. To meet spacing and power, developers picked easy parcels near interchanges. Some were dark corners of big box parking lots with no staff around after 9 p.m., poor lighting, and long walks to restrooms. Technically compliant, practically unwelcoming. Drivers chose farther, safer pins when they could. The targeted site met the grid. It missed the human. Data rules didn't force clarity. Programs often accepted self-reported uptime and vague failure categories. Host site issue, utility outage, driver behavior. Without shared, enforceable error taxonomies and public reporting of fault codes, it was hard to separate genuine upstream problems from avoidable equipment or software faults. In that fog, responsibility diffused and lessons learned stayed private. Vendor lock-in crept back through maintenance. Specs dictated open access at the plug and the payment screen, but service parts and tools remained proprietary. A certified module failed, the warranty covered the box, but only the OEM's tech could flash the replacement. Scheduling slipped. Ports sat idle waiting for a badge-holding specialist to fly in. NEVI didn't intentionally create that trap. It didn't explicitly close it either. What would the spec look like if it were performance first? Fewer line items, sharper teeth. Pay for delivered energy to the public during defined windows with independent auditing. Define uptime as session success rates and sustained power delivery, not heartbeat pings. Require standardized, hot-swappable components across vendors in funded portfolios, with regional parts depots and response time SLAs that escalate to real clawbacks. Mandate open data on fault codes and repair times, anonymized if needed, so the ecosystem can improve. Crucially, align with the meter. Encourage or require tariff partnerships before awarding funds. Demand charge pilots, measured relief tied to verified load factors and uptime. Don't buy power levels that crush operators under a rate schedule the site can't survive. Fund storage when it pencils for peak shaving and require vendors to share performance risk, not just sell boxes. Specs wrote a shopping list. They didn't write a business model. The list got metal in the ground. The missing model left drivers in the cold, staring at compliant screens that didn't move electrons. Until the rulebook measures what people feel at the curb and ties money to it, the theater will go on and the lots will keep telling the truth. Winners, losers, and cash-outs. While specs wrote shopping lists and meters wrote reality, money found its own path. During the SPAC rush, glossy decks told a simple story. Exponential EV adoption, linear charger growth, software margins on top. Investor calls promised thousands of ports, double-digit utilization, and platform revenue. Founders rang bells. Early shareholders locked profits before the first winter exposed field failures. The cash-out came fast. The obligations lingered. Hardware-first strategies dominated. If the game paid for boxes in the ground, sell boxes. Move units, book revenue. Let someone else carry the uptime risk. Integrators stitched together dispensers, cabinets, payment modules, and gateways from different vendors, captured the equipment margin, and left the operator holding the maintenance bag. To hit price points, they cut redundancy and spares. The install team celebrated substantial completion. The service team, smaller and newer, inherited the mess. Managed service was sold as the bomb. We'll take care of everything for a monthly fee. In practice, thin field teams covered huge territories. SLAs quoted business days. Failures happened on Friday nights. Spare parts were in transit. Tickets bounced between help desks and subcontractors. A grocer hosting a site saw the pattern. A burst of attention at launch, then long stretches of voicemail, then a pleasant email explaining that supply chain delayed a fix everyone needed yesterday. Host sites learned the hardest way. The deal sounded like found foot traffic. A national brand would place chargers, cover power, maybe share a slice of revenue. Then the chargers went dark. Drivers called the store, not the operator. Staff bore the complaints. Social posts tagged the location's logo beside a dead screen. The promised lift in basket size didn't show, and the brand paid in reputation anyway. Some hosts unplugged pedestals to stop the flood of bad will. Others asked for removal and discovered the contract made that hard. Insurance stepped in where maintenance didn't. Vandalism claims rose. Cut cables, pried doors, smashed screens. Deductibles were high. Payouts took months. Reinsurers nudged premiums upward or asked for on-site security the economics couldn't support. A night crew and better lighting helped, but not everywhere. Operators learned to stage claims to avoid multiple deductibles in a quarter. An actuary's spreadsheet replaced a technician's route. Clawbacks were supposed to keep the system honest. Some agencies wrote them in, fewer enforced them hard. When they did, the market sorted winners from ghosts. Operators with balance sheets paid, reworked sites, and stayed in the game. Thinly capitalized players negotiated extensions, offered corrective action plans, then quietly wound down. Shell companies dissolved. Warranty obligations floated into voicemail. The dots on the map remained. The names behind them changed. Not everyone played extract and exit. A handful of operators built like utilities from the start. They hired technicians before marketers. They kept regional depots with bins of cable heads, contactors, power modules, and payment boards. They standardized on fewer SKUs. They wrote contracts that tied vendor payments to session success and uptime during peak windows. They turned down sites that wouldn't pencil under local tariffs. Growth was slower, retention was higher. Their pins grew a reputation drivers would pay for. Drivers voted with wallets and time. Reliability earned a premium. A network that started sessions in seconds and kept them running could price a few cents higher per kilowatt hour and still draw lines on Sundays because time is money. The losers tried fees to compensate, idle penalties, per-minute add-ons, failed session charges that held cards for days. That moved short-term revenue and long-term trust in opposite directions. Meanwhile, the SPAC decks met quarters. Projections demanded port counts and revenue milestones, so companies added sites fast, often through host networks more eager for announcements than for maintenance budgets. When utilization lagged and demand charges bit, the same companies pivoted to software. They announced roaming partnerships, fleet portals, analytics dashboards. Useful, but not a substitute for a van with spare handles and a tech who answers at 7 p.m. Shareholders saw the split in filings. Equipment revenue looked strong early, then flattened as operators hesitated to buy more boxes that didn't earn. Service revenue climbed, but so did cost of service. Gross margins slid as truck rolls ate profits. Some firms wrote down inventory tied to aging standards. Others booked restructuring, as they pulled back from territories with tough tariffs and tougher winters. The losers weren't just companies. Towns that leaned on public chargers for economic development watched travelers bypass exits after 3 bad experiences. Small businesses that co-signed the promise became complaint desks. Renters without home charging bore the brunt, detours, missed shifts, and a creeping sense that the public system didn't include them. Municipalities discovered the endgame: removal costs, liability for derelict equipment, and a public angry at both the operator and city hall. Follow the money, and a pattern repeats. Cash moved at announcement, at equipment delivery, at ribbon cutting. Risk moved to operations, to drivers, to hosts, to ratepayers. The players who won early optimized for that flow. The players who survived now optimize for a different one. Delivered kilowatt hours during the hours that matter, verified by someone who isn't on their payroll. They cash in slower, cash out rarely, and spend on maintenance like rent. There's no mystery to who profits in each model. The build-to-spec crowd harvested fees and press. The operate-to-perform crowd earns patient, unglamorous returns. One treats reliability as marketing, the other treats it as the product. The map can't show that difference. The curb can. And drivers already know which pins cost less in time, even when the price per kilowatt hour is higher. The human math. Put the spreadsheets down for a minute and listen to what it costs in lives lived at the curb. Maya drives a delivery route for a pharmacy. meds with time windows. She budgets a 15-minute top-up between stops at a fast charger behind a strip mall. The app shows 4 green pins. 2 refuse payment. 1 starts then drops at 3%. The 4th works at half power. She waits 40 minutes, calls 2 customers to push back drop-offs, and eats a bad rating for a delay she didn't cause. Her manager shrugs. Plan better. She already did. Carlos cares for his dad 3 nights a week. He leaves his shift at the warehouse at 11 p.m., swings by a charger, and aims to be home by midnight. One Tuesday, the site is taped off. Vandalism. The next nearest is 15 miles. He goes plugs in, and the handshake fails twice. He pulls in again, angle adjusted, and it starts. 40 minutes later, he's on the road. He gets home at 1:30. At 6 a.m., he's up to help with meds. He starts the day behind, again. Families feel it too. An aunt and 2 nieces crossing 2 states for a graduation pull off with 14% left. The charger works, until the thunderstorm. A momentary sag on the line trips the session. The app says restarting. It doesn't. They try another stall, card decline. They call support, hold music. They book a last-minute room because the next verified site is 100 miles. The hotel rate, the takeout, the missed morning photos, none of that shows up in a policy brief. Hidden costs pile up. Time becomes a currency spent in 5-minute increments of fiddling with apps, reseating connectors, re-entering billing addresses, and watching preparing bars that lie. Stress taxes attention. People take longer routes to chase reliable pins. They burn PTO on missed starts. They keep 2 charging accounts just in case and preload balances that sit unused. They buy portable adapters in the trunk for edge cases, then find the edge case is the routine. So drivers learn the reliability premium. If one network starts sessions in seconds and stays stable, they'll pay more. A few cents per kilowatt hour is cheap compared with standing outside in sleet re-authenticating a card. You see it in behavior. The better site has a line at 5 p.m., while cheaper, flakier ports sit unused across the street. That's not theory. It's a revealed preference measured in time. Equity sits at the center of this math. Home charging is the quiet success, but renters miss it. People in apartments, students, new immigrants, service workers, anyone without a driveway, rely on public options that are brittle. Their margin for error is thin. A missed charge means a missed shift, and a missed shift means a missed rent payment in a month where groceries already cost more. Reliability isn't a convenience feature for them. It's the difference between stability and a scramble. Rural dependence magnifies every failure. In town, a dead site is an annoyance. On the high plains, it's a detour of 50 miles on a 2-lane road with spotty cell service and 1 cafe that shuts at 8. If the only station within 100 miles has 2 working ports and 1 is down, that's a coin flip at midnight in February. The driver who loses that coin sleeps in the car, calls in late, and remembers the brand that left them there. Micro-stories make the pattern plain. A rideshare driver in Phoenix takes a long trip to the suburbs, arrives low, and finds the site capped at 30 kilowatts after a software update. He cancels rides for an hour to fill. His acceptance rate drops. The app penalizes him. A postal worker in the Midwest budgets a lunchtime stop at a city garage that used to be reliable. A construction crew blocked the stalls for the week. She loops to an out-of-the-way site with no bathroom, loses half her break, and eats cold soup back at the depot. Meanwhile, the incentives were designed by people who don't live these days. The forms measured ports in ground, not minutes saved. The contracts paid for compliance bullets, not for caregivers getting home sooner. The map's glow hides the gaps in a life, the calls pushed late, the apologies stacked up, the money spent on hotels and idle fees because the handshake wouldn't complete. The human math is blunt. Drivers carry the risk the system won't. When awards ignore uptime and tariffs ignore peaky reality, the bill lands on people with the least cushion. If reliability is optional, time becomes the subsidy. And right now, the subsidy is coming from tired hands on cold connectors, paying with the hours they don't get back. Grid reality versus press release power. Before any car plugs in, the hard part starts at the pole. Interconnection isn't a phone call, it's a queue. Utilities look at your requested service, say 1 to 2 megawatts for a small fast charging site, and trace it upstream. Is there capacity on the nearest transformer? If not, you're in for a new pad mount unit with lead times that stretch from months into a year when supply chains tighten. If a feeder is nearing limits, a reconductor job appears. A substation upgrade? That puts you behind projects already waiting. Make ready sounds simple: trenching, conduit pads, and the meter, but the ground hides surprises. Crews cut into soil and find fiber nobody mapped, water lines where drawings said dirt, or a utility easement that narrows the run. Each discovery triggers a change order, a new permit, a call to a city inspector with a full calendar. Civil work that looked like 2 weeks becomes 6, and your contractor juggles between rain days and other jobs. Permits stack in sequence. You need a site plan stamped, a traffic plan approved, electrical drawings reviewed, and sometimes a stormwater sign-off for a lot you didn't think counted as a project. Each jurisdiction has its own cadence. A missing signature pushes the entire schedule to the next planning meeting. Meanwhile, the press release already ran with chargers opening this fall. Fall becomes before the holidays. Holidays become spring. Peak clustering drives utility posture. They know holiday surges and Sunday waves stress feeders designed for steady commercial loads, not 4 cars asking for 150 kilowatts at once. So they stage energization. They'll set a meter for a lower service first, watch the profile, then green light a step up. That caution isn't malice, it's risk management. A bad bet on an oversized service that never fills is stranded copper. A bad bet on an undersized service that trips at Christmas is angry customers and emergency overtime. Soft loads meet hard promises. Steel in the ground is visible. Electrons on demand are conditional. A developer can buy pedestals and pour pads on schedule. They can't accelerate a transformer that's waiting on a core shipment 2 states away. They can't conjure a line crew during wildfire season when crews are pulled to restoration. So sites sit in limbo, complete to the eye, dark at the meter, while dashboards still call them in progress. Even when power flows, volatility rules. Holiday clusters smash into quiet weekdays. Noon sun helps if a utility has renewables feeding the mix. 6 p.m. doesn't. Sites serving commuters see weekday early evenings spike, then drop to nothing by 10. Highway sites rise and fall with weather and school calendars. For operators, that means the shape of load the grid sees is jagged. For utilities, it means planning must assume the worst 15 minutes, not the average day. A familiar echo of the demand charges that crush a business model downstream. Energization has its own choreography. A utility crew needs safe access, a clear path, and sometimes an outage window to switch in a new service. If the host site is a busy plaza, that window might be 2 a.m. on a weekday, and only if the grocery isn't receiving deliveries. Miss it and you're bumped a week. An inspector might require bollards added or grounding revised before the meter tag goes on. One missing bond, one wrong label, and the meter stays in a box. Across territories, risk appetites differ. Some utilities run proactive EV programs with dedicated interconnection teams and published timelines. Others fold applications into legacy queues designed for small commercial upgrades. In one county, you get a named engineer and weekly updates. In the next, you get a shared inbox and a case number. Both serve the same physics. The process friction changes the calendar and the carrying costs. Meanwhile, standards shift underfoot. A site designed a year ago for one connector set, one payment module, and one communications path may energize into a world that expects a different plug family or a stronger roaming integration. Retrofitting at the last mile invites resubmittals and retests. If you swap a dispenser model to match the new standard, the utility might ask for updated fault current calculations. That's another review cycle. The schedule stretches while the press release ages. Developers try to hedge. Some order transformers early and store them, if they can get them at all, and if their cash flow can carry inventory. Some pre-negotiate multiple parcels in case a utility study flags one feeder as constrained. Some run dual designs to pivot when a standard changes. Those moves cost money before a single kilowatt-hour sells. They also lower the odds that you end up with a ribbon cutting on a dead site. On the ground, the human pattern returns. A city engineer says, "We're close." The utility planner says, "We need a study." The contractor says, "We hit fiber." The operator says, "We'll open in June." June arrives with barricades still around the pad. Drivers see pedestals and assume charging. Locals field questions and frustration. The gap between press release power and grid reality lands on the only people who can't move the schedule, the ones who need the charge tonight. None of this makes fast charging impossible. It makes it infrastructure. Lead times, queues, staged energization, and shifting standards are normal in power work. The problem isn't that these steps exist. It's that funding and public communication treated them like footnotes. If timelines had baked in utility cadence, and if dollars had flowed on energization and audited performance instead of on equipment delivery, fewer towns would be stuck with silent monuments to optimism. The standards war that wasn't. While interconnections crawled and tariffs bit, another story played out at the plug. It looked like a standards war. It wasn't. It was a moving target that turned sites into compatibility museums. Start with the alphabet soup. Early DC fast charging in North America split between XIII and CCS. Operators installed both to cover fleets of Leafs and the growing CCS crowd. Then automakers pivoted. The North American Charging Standard, NACS, gained endorsements, and suddenly the connector drivers wanted wasn't the one many sites had just bought. Overnight, yesterday's future-proof port felt like the spare key nobody used. Adapters were meant to bridge the gap. On paper, NACS to CCS adapters would keep cars talking to older dispensers while new hardware rolled in. In practice, adapters multiplied handshake paths. A car spoke one dialect, the adapter translated. The dispenser listened through firmware tuned for another era. It worked at noon on Tuesday and failed at 6 p.m. on Sunday when jitter rose, temperature dropped, or a tolerance stack hit its edge. From the driver's seat, it felt random. From the logs, it was a borderline that only showed up in the field. Certification became the bottleneck. Each new adapter, each firmware that added NACS signaling, each payment module change to match new screens and options, all needed lab time. Labs were full, and test suites trailed real-world permutations. A vendor could code support, validate internally, and still wait weeks for the green light to deploy broadly. Meanwhile, operators faced a choice: hold back a fix until certification cleared, or roll it to stop bleeding tonight and risk an audit later. Most waited. Drivers kept meeting the same fault. Software fragmentation layered on. Roaming tokenization had to accommodate new IDs and credential formats as networks added NACS-capable accounts. Apps updated slowly. Cars updated over the air in waves. One brand's vehicles would talk to a site flawlessly after an OTA. The same model, one version behind, would fail with the same adapter. Support scripts asked, "What firmware are you on?" Most drivers didn't know, and shouldn't have to. Every change reset uptime. A connector swap triggered new failure modes. Strain reliefs at different angles, pin where patterns the old cable guards didn't protect. Firmware adding NACS logic touched timing on CCS paths. A fix for one opened a crack in the other. Field validation lagged months behind announcements. A site that had finally stabilized under CCS saw ticket volume spike again after a well-intentioned upgrade. Unknown to drivers, host sites absorbed the construction churn. New pedestals required permits and inspections again. Conduit routes designed for thick CCS cables had to be re-terminated for slimmer NACS assemblies with different bend radii. ADA reach changed by inches, inspectors cared. A simple add NACS line item turned into a weekend with bollards moved, signage replaced, and payment screens reskinned to match new prompts. Meanwhile, stranded ports became dead weight. XIII bays sat mostly empty outside a few regions where a loyal base remained. Operators debated: keep a rarely used port alive for goodwill, or reclaim the breaker space for another high-throughput connector. The spreadsheet pointed one way, the equity lens pointed another. Some split the difference. Adapters on lanyards posted instructions, call support if stuck. It helped, until the lanyard vanished or the adapter cracked in heat. The non-war also had winners. A handful of networks co-developed with automakers, validating NACS paths end-to-end months before public rollout. They merged support teams, shared error taxonomies, and pushed over-the-air fixes coordinated to the hour. Their sites looked effortless during the transition. Everyone else reverse-engineered from release notes and public specs, then learned at the curb. If this had been a true war, one side would have lost quickly, and the market would have moved on. Instead, it was a staggered migration. For operators, that meant parallel inventories, 2 connector families, 2 sets of spares, 2 training paths for techs, 2 certification queues. For drivers, it meant a season where compatibility depended on car build month, adapter batch, app version, and weather. The lesson isn't pick a winner earlier. It's designed for churn. Hot swappable cable heads. Modular dispensers with bays that accept new signal stacks without cabinet swaps. Firmware architectures that isolate protocol layers so a NACS update can't knock CCS timing sideways. Shared, public conformance tests drivers can run from the car. A quick pre-flight handshake that tells you, before you put it in park, whether this stall can deliver full power to your specific build. As the dust settles, NACS will likely carry most traffic. But the migration tax has already been paid by people standing in lots at dusk, watching preparing blink. A war would have been clean. This was maintenance by another name, and one more reason why only the boring, modular, audited approach survives the next acronym. The math that would have worked. If you strip away the press releases and build for what actually happens, a workable model appears. It starts where utilization isn't a hope, it's scheduled. Fleet depots, delivery hubs, and ride-hail staging lots know when vehicles arrive, how long they dwell, and how many kilowatt hours they need before rolling out. That lets an operator right-size power instead of chasing a worst-case highway surge. A depot with 80 vans can stagger charging overnight at lower power, buy cheaper energy, and avoid the 15-minute spikes that punish public sites. When a few units need fast turns at 3 p.m., on-site storage handles the burst and refills after midnight. At airports and ride-hail corridors, the pattern is similar. Vehicles dwell in predictable windows waiting for trips. Load sharing across dozens of plugs keeps wheels turning without slamming the meter. The software doesn't chase walk UPS. It orchestrates a queue the operator controls. That predictability flips the economics. Maintenance is routine, not an emergency. Truck rolls can be planned with parts in hand. Uptime is measured to the hour a fleet needs, not averaged across strangers' stop-and-go schedules. The fleet pays for what it gets, delivered kilowatt hours and reliability, because every missed session is a missed fare or a late delivery. Co-location with retail that already understands dwell time is the second lever. Grocery, big box, coffee, and highway travel centers have traffic, bathrooms, lighting, and staff. They've learned to monetize a 20 to 40-minute visit. A working site increases basket size and keeps customers longer, so the host has a reason to fund maintenance beyond goodwill. Shared costs help. The cameras, plowing, cleaning, and lighting are already in the budget. Add chargers, add a clear revenue share, and both parties have skin in the uptime game. The store's manager calls fast when a port fails. The operator answers because the contract pays for performance, not just metal. Storage belongs here as operations, not a trophy asset. Batteries sized to catch site-specific spikes turn a tariff from enemy to line item you can plan for. The model works when vendors guarantee the storage will shave a defined kilowatt peak, with penalties if it doesn't. That shifts some risk back to the storage provider and away from the site operator, who can't control who arrives when. When storage is treated as a service, with monitored performance and shared savings, it earns its keep. When it's bolted on to win grants, it becomes another box to maintain with no clear ROI. Quality beats coverage in this math. Fewer, denser sites with higher throughput support a regional maintenance spine. Stock depots, technicians within a 90-minute loop, hot swappable modules, and standardized cable heads across a territory. That density lowers response times and lowers the cost per fix. Drivers learn which pins are worth a detour. Utilization rises, which funds more service, which maintains trust. It's a flywheel, but it spins only when the map stops chasing every exit and starts reinforcing the nodes where people already stop. Contract design is the hinge. Pay for delivered kilowatt hours to the public and for audited uptime during peak windows. Don't pay for pedestals. Tie a chunk of compensation to session success rates and sustained power delivery. Say, no more than 30 seconds to first electron, no mid-session drops below a promised floor except for vehicle-requested pulses. Add independent audits, mystery sessions, telemetry sampling, and published error taxonomies so the whole industry learns. Claw back real money for misses, then recycle those funds into corrective work, not general budgets. On the tariff side, align carrots with the physics you want. Offer demand relief that phases in with utilization, and only while audited uptime holds above a threshold. If a site breaks its promises to drivers, the tariff perk steps down automatically until performance returns. That creates a shared objective across utility, operator, and host. Keep sessions starting, keep power flowing, and build load factors that justify permanent rate treatment. Publish templates so operators know the rules before they pour concrete. Standardization has to live under the hood. Fund modularity. Common power modules, common contactors, common payment boards across vendors in a funded portfolio. Require that critical components be hot swappable with hand tools and no vendor-locked firmware. Keep regional parts on shelves, not in a global warehouse. Certify technicians like linemen, tiered credentials, safety refreshers, and pay that keeps them from bouncing after 6 months. Make maintenance routes a budget line from day one. Set as a fixed share of CAPEX the way transit agencies do with rolling stock. This model also admits where public fast charging is the wrong tool. Lean on what's already winning. Home charging and workplace level 2. Overnight kilowatt hours fit the grid's valleys. 8-hour top UPS at offices are cheap, easy on hardware, and steady. Destination level 2 at hotels, campuses, and garages cuts the need for expensive highway bursts. The public fast charge network then serves what it's good at, true waypoints, rather than backfilling for garages that zoning never built. Finally, trim the heroics from product promises. Build fewer features that break, more that harden the basics. Pre-flight checks from the car, session timers that match reality, price displays that don't move mid-charge, and support that answers fast with the power to dispatch. Hide nothing. Post fault codes publicly. If a port is capped at 50 kilowatts for heat or repair, say so before a driver parks. People will plan around truth. They'll abandon wishful thinking that wastes their time. Do those unglamorous things, and the spreadsheet behaves. The sites with scheduled load and daily dwell cover their costs. The highway nodes, fewer but better, stay alive through winter and holidays. Maintenance becomes routine, not triage. The payoff isn't a headline. It's a boring lot that works at 6 p.m., which is the only victory that counts. Who pays when plans fail? When the ribbon curls in the wind and the lot goes quiet, the bill goes somewhere. Start with taxpayers. Grants disperse on milestones long before a site proves it can deliver power consistently. When performance misses pile up, clawbacks are rare, partial, or slow. Funds tied up in dead or limping sites don't come back in time to help the next town. That's money already spent on pedestals, pads, and press, locked into assets that don't serve the public they were bought for. Drivers pay in cash and in hours. Higher per kWh rates try to cover truck rolls and demand penalties. Session fees and idle charges appear to plug holes left by thin utilization. People budget for an energy cost and meet a stack of line items they didn't expect. They also pay in detours and late arrivals, hotel rooms booked at the last minute, meals grabbed at odd hours, daycare fees that tick past grace periods because a handshake failed twice. None of that hits an operator's ledger. All of it lands on a family's month. Ratepayers carry the quiet share. Utility upgrades, bigger transformers, new feeders, reconductoring, roll into capital plans recovered across bills. In the best case, those investments serve growing load with good factors. In the worst, they serve sites that sit half-idle and spike on holidays, so the grid absorbs stress without steady revenue. The promise is future volume will backfill. Until it does, households and small businesses in the territory help finance upgrades for chargers they might not use. Municipalities inherit the mess no one budgets for. A city backs a site on public land, celebrates an opening, and then faces years of complaints when reliability slips. Calls go to City Hall first. Enforcement staff spend hours triaging issues they don't control: vendor tickets, utility timelines, insurance claims. When an operator folds or a host terminates, the physical remains don't vanish. Removal costs land on the city when a contract's exit terms are vague. Concrete gets cut, bollards pulled, scarred asphalt patched, and liability sits with the public if a derelict pedestal injures someone before it's gone. Opportunity cost is everywhere. Those same dollars could have funded overnight level 2 in neighborhoods without driveways, or workplace charging in municipal garages that would have served hundreds daily at low cost. They could have backed technician training, regional parts depots, or tariff pilots timed to build load factors. Instead, they bought compliance, boxes that met specs and missed people. While budgets chase cleanup, projects that could cut traffic, emissions, and bills wait another cycle. There's another pair, small host businesses caught between hope and reality. They traded parking for promised traffic. When sessions fail, they get tagged online, not the operator. Staff end up as ad hoc support, explaining faults they can't diagnose. A few see basket lift from successful sites and press operators to fix problems fast. Many see more friction than spend. They learn removal costs, indemnities, and easement clauses the hard way. The next time someone pitches a free install, they remember the winter of dead screens and angry customers. Insurers spread the risk with premiums that creep. Vandalism claims, cable thefts, and weather damage push deductibles higher. Operators pass some cost to hosts through lease terms, and the rest flows to drivers and ratepayers. The system starts pricing in failure as normal, repairs as expected, downtime as routine, until reliability becomes the outlier that costs extra to deliver. That's upside down for infrastructure. Who actually returns money when programs demand it? Large operators with assets and lawyers settle, fix, and keep going. Thin players negotiate extensions, deliver corrective plans, then dissolve when the next bill hits. Warranties follow them into the dark. Agencies rewrite solicitations with tighter teeth, but the lost months sit in driver stories and city budgets. The next round carries more caution and less trust, making it harder for the good actors to grow at the speed policy wants. Meanwhile, households subsidize uncertainty with their time. We met them already: delivery drivers, caregivers, road trippers, paying for gaps with hours that don't come back. That time is the hidden copay of a system that bought coverage instead of performance. The longer it persists, the more people with options avoid public fast charging altogether. They buy plug-in hybrids, they charge at home, they route through the one brand they trust even if it's out of the way. Everyone else, renters, service workers, rural travelers, stays exposed to the brittle parts. It doesn't have to stay like this. Dollars can follow delivered energy and audited uptime. Tariffs can reward load factors and pause perks when service slips. Contracts can make removal a funded obligation, not a surprise. Cities can require performance bonds, standardized parts, and response time. SLAs before a permit is issued. Utilities can publish timelines and interconnection queues so developers plan for reality, not press cycles. And programs can put money where people charge most: at night, at work, and at a few well-run waypoints. Until then, the bill keeps moving downhill. Taxpayers fund starts. Ratepayers fund wires. Drivers fund gaps. Cities fund cleanups. Small businesses fund reputations. It's a chain that looks invisible in dashboards and obvious at 6 p.m. in a cold lot. The quiet success story. We've spent a lot of time in cold lots. Here's the part that actually works, quietly, with no ribbon cuttings, because it fits the way people live and the way the grid breathes. It starts at home. Overnight charging is the closest thing to perfect in this story. Long dwell, cheap energy, steady loads that slide into the valley of demand when power is easiest to deliver. A simple level 2 in a garage or carport adds 20 to 40 miles per hour. You plug in, walk inside, and wake up with range. No line, no handshake drama, no demand spike. Utilities like it because it smooths their curves. With basic time of use rates, people shift even more into late evening. The grid doesn't need to stand up a separate peaker for 100,000 little plugs. It needs planning and price signals. That's manageable. Transformers feel the difference. More nighttime hum, less evening slam, and we're more evenly. It's not flashy, but it's predictable, and predictability is golden power. Workplace level 2 picks up the day shift. Cars sit for 8 hours. That's plenty to add what a commute used. Employers get a retention perk, and employees get miles at a rate that beats public fast charging by a lot. The equipment is simpler, the maintenance lighter, and the cadence boring in the best way. A facilities manager can keep dozens of ports alive with the same team that handles lighting and HVAC. Firmware updates happen off-peak. If one port fails, the driver moves a space. Nobody's stranded. Destination level 2 is the glue between those two. Hotels, campuses, municipal garages, and day trip spots don't need 150 kilowatt bursts. They need certainty that a car will be full by morning or topped by the time a class ends. A handful of 7 to 19 kilowatt ports, well marked, with clear rules and working payment, remove pressure from highway nodes. Tourist towns that install them see fewer frantic fast charge stops and more relaxed evenings. People plug in, then spend money inside. Here's the kicker. Better batteries are shrinking public fast charge dependence. Cars leave home with 250 to 350 miles and cold weather losses, while real are manageable when you can refill slowly overnight. Efficiency gains stretch every kilowatt hour. That means fewer emergency waypoints and more planned charging where dwell already exists. The public network still matters: road trips, renters, edge cases. But the baseline moves to places where queues don't form and demand charges don't detonate budgets. Renters, though, need a bridge. The success story includes curbside and multifamily level 2 in real numbers, not pilot scale. When cities let property managers add shared ports without triggering full parking overhauls, adoption climbs. When utilities fund make-ready in older buildings and pair it with smart load management, dozens of cars share limited capacity without panel upgrades. It's the same principle, long dwell, steady load, applied to the half of households without a driveway. Operations are simpler, too. Level 2 hardware is cheaper, lighter, and modular. A failed handle doesn't sideline a site. A maintenance tech can swap it in minutes. Payment is often app-based or included in parking, so one flaky card reader doesn't kill a row. Uptime looks like what drivers feel, a stall that just works. When a port does fail, the stakes are lower because charging isn't binary. You've got hours, not minutes, to find another plug. Retailers see a different math than with DC. A grocery with a dozen level 2s near the entrance turns parking into dwell. Shoppers stay 40 minutes instead of 25. Basket size rises. The store funds upkeep because the return is immediate and visible at the register. The chargers aren't a PR halo, they're part of merchandising. Put them under lights, near carts, with snow cleared first, and they become as normal as a cart corral. Policy fits this pattern when it pays for outcomes. Rebates for home level 2 tied to off-peak enrollment. Fast-track permits for multifamily retrofits if chargers are networked for load management. Utility make-ready for workplace lots that commit a percentage of spaces to employees over years, not months. Public funds aimed at destination level 2 in rural towns, where a reliable overnight option can erase a highway fast charge bottleneck. None of this eliminates the need for good fast charging. It right-sizes it. A network built on home, work, and destination level 2 reduces the number of expensive, fragile nodes that must perform perfectly. The few that remain can be better, staffed, well-lit, co-located with real services, and supported by maintenance routes funded by steady revenue, not hope. The quiet success is boring by design. It treats charging like Wi-Fi. Everywhere you linger, always on, rarely the reason you came. It asks less of drivers, less of the grid at 6 p.m., and less of municipalities praying a ribbon will cover a decade of upkeep. It's not a headline. It's a habit. And habits, built right, don't strand anyone at midnight. The fix, if anyone wants it. If the map was built for announcements, the fix is built for boredom. Start by flipping what gets paid. Tie public dollars to uptime audited by someone with no equity in the outcome. Not heartbeats, not ports reporting ready. Pay for session success rate, time to first electron under 30 seconds, sustained power delivery within a promised band, and repair intervals measured from first ticket to verified fix. Miss the target in peak windows and a clawback triggers automatically, not after a meeting. Hit it, and the premium steps up next quarter. The check follows electrons, not invoices. Make the audits real. Random mystery charges every week. Telemetry sampling that compares what the charger says with what the meter bills. Shared error taxonomies across programs so isolation fault and payment timeout mean the same thing in Arizona and Maine. Publish anonymized repair times and common failures by component. When everyone can see that a certain contactor trips in cold rain, vendors fix it faster because now their name sits next to that graph. Standardize the guts, not the logos. Fund modular designs with hot swappable power stages, cable heads, payment boards, and comms cards that share interfaces and mounting patterns across vendors. No proprietary dongles for basic field service. If a part fails, a tech swaps it in minutes with hand tools and scans a QR code that pairs it to the cabinet without calling a lab. Anything that needs a factory password doesn't qualify for money. You're not buying art, you're buying uptime. Build a workforce like it's an industry, not a pilot. Certify technicians in tiers, low voltage comms and payment, high power and safety, commissioning and metering, with pay ladders that keep them. Fund regional depots stocked with the 10 parts that fail most, plus cables, boots, seals, and a couple of full power modules. Pair every depot with guaranteed response rings. 90 minutes to triage inside the ring, same day for hard faults that take down half a site or more. Pay routes, not calls, standing contracts that fund a cadence of preventive sweeps, so the first time a tech sees a site isn't in a blizzard. Turn storage from sculpture into service. If a site needs a battery to survive demand charges, by performance, not boxes. The storage vendor commits to shaving a defined peak with measured results on the utility bill. Miss the shave, pay the difference. Hit it, share the savings. That aligns everyone with the meter. Tie that contract to firmware that respects drivers. No stealth throttles that turn a promised 150 into 50 without warning. If power is capped to dodge a peak, the screen has to say it before you park. Reform tariffs with clocks and consequences. Offer demand charge relief that phases in with measured utilization, and only while audited uptime stays above a threshold. If a site delivers clean sessions and builds load factor, the relief persists and steps down over years as volume grows. If uptime dips, the relief pauses automatically until the issue's clear. Publish a standard tariff template that utilities can adopt, so operators know the rules across counties instead of relearning them with each application. Clean up data rules. Mandate open, real-time feeds for availability, session starts, error codes, and power delivery, with privacy respected and rate limited for sanity. So routing apps and cars can steer around a failing stall before the driver wastes minutes. Require operators to retain raw logs for a set period and to share postmortems on major outages with scrubbed details. If a firmware change bricked 40 sites, the industry should learn in weeks, not in a winter of repeated pain. Contracts need sharper teeth and simpler language. Require performance bonds sized to removal and remediation. If an operator folds or walks, the bond funds de-energizing, cleanup, and safe decommissioning. Bake host site obligations into templates. Snow clearing, lighting, access to restrooms during posted hours. Make those obligations visible in the app, so drivers know what to expect. Tie revenue share to delivered kilowatt hours, not theoretical foot traffic, so hosts push for fixes when sessions stumble. Respect the human at the curb. Pre-flight checks in the car that confirm handshake and available power before you shift to park. Plain language faults on screens with a QR that opens the right support flow and populates the last 30 seconds of logs. Prices posted clearly, including any per minute and idle components, locked at session start. If a session fails after authorization, instant release of funds. If the site is partially derated, label each stall's cap in giant numbers. Shrink the map to strengthen the spine. Fund fewer sites with higher quality where people already stop and require proof of maintenance coverage before a permit. Co-locate with staffed retail and food whenever possible. In rural corridors, fund one truly excellent waypoint per stretch. Lighting, cameras, bathrooms, plows prioritized, rather than 3 lonely pins that take turns dying. The goal isn't dots, it's trust. Finally, slow the churn. Align specs with the connector future you know is coming, but design cabinets and cable heads to be field upgradable without new permits. Require vendors to prove that a protocol update can be deployed independently of payment and UI layers. Reserve lab time for funded portfolios so certification isn't the bottleneck when a defect is known. The standard will move. The sites shouldn't crumble when it does. None of this is glamorous. It's purchase orders, spare bins, route maps, and audits. It's also the shortest path from available to charges every time, which is the only line that matters. Lessons from other infrastructures. We're not the first to wire a nation. Other networks learned these lessons the hard way and wrote playbooks we can lift without pride getting in the way. Start with cell towers. Carriers didn't paint every hill with their own steel. They learned to share. A few companies own towers and backhaul, then lease space to multiple carriers. Fewer, stronger sites with reliable power, monitored 24/7, and regional crews with parts. When storms knock panels, spares come down the highway, not across an ocean. The economics reward co-location. One set of civil works, one access road, multiple tenants. That model trades coverage illusions for dependable nodes. And it's why your phone works after a bad night when half the town is on the network. Fast charging can copy this. Build fewer, sturdier hubs at proven waypoints. Share the trench, the transformer, the fiber. Let multiple operators ride the same backbone, with clear SLAs that keep everyone honest. ATMs and payment networks offer another map. They didn't chase flashy features. They chase certification and redundancy. Every device type gets lab tested to a shared suite. Terminals fail gracefully. If chip doesn't read, magstripe prompts. If the host is down, the terminal knows to retry on a schedule. Switches treat every message format as a contract. Outages get postmortems that feed rule updates across networks. Crucially, penalties bite. If a processor misses uptime or settlement accuracy, fines show up, then volume moves. That discipline keeps the miracle invisible. Money moves because everyone fears the report card. Charging needs that culture. Define sessions as transactions with strict acceptance criteria and fallbacks. Certify end-to-end paths like a card network does. Car firmware, cable head, dispenser, payment, and roaming. Under load, under heat, under snow. Publish the test suite. Failures trigger fixes everywhere, not just a quiet patch on one brand. Transit systems live and die by maintenance percentages. Agencies that last set a fixed share of capital aside for upkeep. Buy a bus, fund the parts room. Build a rail line, budget for grinding, signals, and track. They stock spares, rotate rolling stock, and accept that service windows are sacred. When they don't, the backlog blooms and the public learns the schedule is a suggestion. The good systems also standardize fleets to shrink variation, because variety is charming until you can't find the right brake pad. Charging needs the same math. A fixed maintenance carve-out tied to every public dollar spent, enforced annually. Spare parts lists written into contracts, with local depots stocked before opening day. And a simple rule: if you can't maintain it, you don't build it. Look at water and electric utilities for regulatory backbone. They live under uptime obligations and rate cases that tie revenue to performance. When a system misses, regulators require plans and track milestones. When a system performs, rates reflect prudent investments, not wish lists. Utilities publish outage maps, file reliability metrics, and face hearings when they fall short. The structure makes reliability the default, not a hero move. Apply that to charging. Public metrics for session success and repair time, quarterly hearings for funded portfolios, and automatic rate or grant adjustments when operators hit or miss. Accountability shouldn't depend on a headline, it should run on a calendar. There's a culture thread running through all of these: redundancy and humility. Networks that last assume things break, then design layers so people don't feel it. 2 fiber routes to a tower. 2 power feeds to a data center. 2 ways to authenticate a card. Charging needs 2 ways to take payment, 2 paths to handshake, and 2 avenues to dispatch help. It means stocking the cheap spare that fails too often and overinvesting in the boring seal that keeps water out. It's less about innovation and more about respect for entropy. Now bring it back to our lots. Co-location like cell towers. Shared backbones at travel centers and grocery hubs, with multiple operators buying capacity on the same reliable infrastructure. Certification like ATMs. Independent labs with stress tests operators can't waive. Maintenance budgets like transit. A fixed share of capex locked for 10 years, funding routes and spares, not campaigns. Regulation like utilities. Publish reliability, enforce consequences, and reward those who meet the mark. If we apply that playbook, the rhetoric drops a few decibels, and the results get steadier. You won't see as many groundbreakings. You'll see more working stalls after storms. You won't hear pilot. You'll hear scheduled maintenance window, followed by complete. And when the next connector or protocol arrives, the modular pieces swap without a new parade. We don't need to invent a new discipline for charging. We need to join the ones that already keep the lights on, the water clean, the trains moving, and the cash flowing quietly in the background. Then we can say the lie out loud, without theatrics, and fix it with tools that have names and manuals. The lie, plainly stated. Let's say it cleanly. The claim was simple: build it and they will charge. Put fast chargers everywhere, costs will fall with scale, and the system will run itself toward reliability. It sounded like the internet's story pasted onto electrons. But public fast charging isn't bandwidth. It's steel, weather, tariffs, and trucks with parts, and it breaks if the boring parts don't get paid first. Here's the reality. Low utilization plus high fixed costs break sites. When 4 150 kilowatt stalls sit idle most of the day and spike for 30 minutes on Sunday, the meter writes a bill that revenue can't cover. Demand charges bite, maintenance creeps, and a cable head that fails in February takes weeks to replace because the part lives in a warehouse 2 time zones away. The math that works for home and workplace level 2 doesn't transplant to highway DC fast charging without a plan for load shape and service. The tell was in the incentives. We paid for ribbon cuttings, not for working systems. Programs scored applications on coverage and connector count, not on a verified path to uptime under stress. Audits checked boxes, card readers present, roaming integrations declared, power labels on the cabinet. Meanwhile, drivers measured a different thing. Did the session start in under 30 seconds? Did it hold power? And could they get back on the road without a second try? The map showed progress. The curb told the truth. The consequence is visible now. Billions tied up in stranded assets and stranded drivers. Sites complete but unenergized. Ports available but failing at handshake. XIII pedestals that nobody visits. CCS bays waiting on parts. And NACS adapters that work on Tuesday and fail on Thursday. Municipalities staring at removal quotes. Host businesses fielding complaints they never budgeted for. Utilities juggling upgrades that may never see steady load. And a public losing patience with a promise that asked for faith and delivered friction. So who acts next? Regulators first. Write performance into the money. Delivered kilowatt hours to the public during peak windows. Audited by independent teams, with clawbacks that move automatically when targets aren't met. Define uptime as what drivers feel. Session success, time to first electron, sustained power. Then force the data into daylight. Require performance bonds sized to decommission a failed site, so cities and hosts don't become the cleanup crew when operators fold. Utilities are next. Publish interconnection timelines and queues. Offer demand charge relief tied to measured load factors and verified uptime, and pause it when service slips. Reserve program dollars for hubs co-located with staff and services, not for lonely pins in dark corners. Align pilots with operations. Storage as a contracted shave, not a photo op. Treat public fast charging like any industrial customer with peaky load, cautious, staged, and honest about consequences. Operators have the closest lever. Standardize parts across portfolios, stock regional depots, and hire techs before marketers. Shrink the map to the places that pencil. Travel centers, airports, grocery hubs, and fleet nodes. Price for reliability and own it. Post caps when you derate. Release funds instantly on failed sessions, and dispatch trucks on the same schedule every week, not just after a Twitter flare. If a tariff kills a site, say it and walk away. Chasing unworkable nodes sinks the ones that could pay. Automakers can help by treating charging as part of the car, not a shrug toward the network. Pre-flight checks from the dash. Error codes mapped to shared taxonomies. Joint validation cycles with operators before an OTA lands. If cars can do it for infotainment, they can do it for the thing that gets people home. And us, voters, customers, hosts. Demand contracts that pay for performance. Reward the networks that start fast and stay up by using them even when they cost a bit more. If you're a city, require removal bonds and response time SLAs before a permit. If you're a retailer, tie revenue share to delivered kilowatt hours and insist on maintenance routes you can see on a calendar. If you're a driver, report faults, not just fury, and keep receipts when fees don't match posted prices. The lie wasn't a conspiracy. It was a shortcut. We funded a map and hoped a system would emerge. But systems that work aren't born from hope. They're built from incentives aligned with physics and people. Reliability is a choice, and it costs. Pay for it, measure it, and design for churn, and the fast charge network that remains will be smaller, sturdier, and worth the drive. Keep paying for coverage, and we'll keep buying cold screens and hotel rooms at midnight. Policy chased headlines and left people in parking lots, stranded costs, stranded drivers, and a network that counted ports instead of successful sessions. We didn't buy reliability, we bought monuments to intent. If you want the next dollar to go where electrons flow, watch our episode on megaproject hype cycles and how to spot the tells before the ribbon cutting. Subscribe for more hidden cost breakdowns and the fixes that actually work. Share this with the person who still thinks available means works.